I think that it's something that if you go to international tournaments, people will very, very commonly associate with English as a first language speakers. So they'll be like, like the British do it, the Americans do it, but it's not something that like ESL speakers can do because we don't speak the language so well. I don't think this is true. I think that rhetoric is not something that should be only utilized by the Brits. It's something that's super useful. I think that is the kind of thing that will get you from giving like a 77 to giving a 79, that will get you from an 80 to an 83. It's really, really useful. And the reason why I think that talking about it in this way is important is because when most people talk about rhetoric, it's like, oh, it's like style, it doesn't really count in BP, it's like your tone of voice or how you choose to speak or whether you like whisper or if you speak fast or slow down. But it's not just about the style in which you speak, it's a lot about the language that you use. And in many ways, rhetoric is not stylistic. Rhetoric is something that you utilize to enhance your content and to make sure that your arguments are more powerful. So in many ways, learning to use rhetoric is actually really useful, not for your style, but for improving your content and for making judges vote for you. So that's what I'm going to be talking about. Oh, really? Okay, so I'm going to basically be talking about 3 things that I think are really, really useful and that you can start applying immediately in regards to using rhetoric. The ultimate goal of all of these 3 things is to make sure that you do one thing in your speeches, and that's tell a story. I think that rhetoric is the thing that differentiates between like a random team that kind of like gives 3 arguments and they're all kind of fine arguments, but they don't win, versus a team that maybe also has 3 arguments, but they're able to tell you about why they matter, why you should care about these arguments. You understand why they're arguing what they're arguing. Whereas with the other team, it's just kind of like, yeah, like you gave some reasons, and they're fine, but I don't really know why they matter, why I should care about it. There is no story behind what you're arguing and what your team is standing for, and that's the difference. It's rhetoric. So we're going to talk about how you create that narrative and how you paint that picture. That means that judges know what you as a team stand for and how to vote for you. The first thing, and I think this is a really, really obvious one, but that is the use of introductions and conclusions is massively important in debates. I think that oftentimes people just go like, I am the first speaker and I have 3 arguments that I'm going to talk to you about. Or they think that you have to like have a quote from Nelson Mandela or something like that, like, or like be like, oh yeah, like humans are born free wherever we are in chains. I don't know what this means. It's just like a fancy thing that you say. Introductions are not supposed to be used like that. Introductions are weapons and you should be deploying them. Yay, thank you. So I think that the most useful way to do introductions is to, in a sentence or in 2 sentences, summarize what your case is and what you stand for. And try to summarize it in nice language. So you don't want to be like, my 3 arguments in today's debate. You just want a sentence that sort of says what you as a team stand for. So for example, if you are propping the legalization of organs, if you say, we should legalize human organs, and your arguments are, we should legalize it because it is freedom of choice, you have bodily autonomy. If I want to sell my kidney, I should be allowed to sell my kidney. It's my kidney, not your kidney. I can do what I want with it. And you have another argument that is about the black market and how you are able to stop it. And another argument that is about how you're also able to help people who are in healthcare, because now you can get lungs and kidneys to people who would otherwise die without them. Your introduction should be like a summary, a nice sounding summary that defines what you as a team stand for. So in that case, you stand up at Prime Minister and you go, in today's debate, we think that the most important thing is saving human lives, but not just saving human lives, but also acknowledging that every individual is able to make their own choices and should be allowed to make those choices. At the end, like when you finish that, the judge immediately is able to tell, freedom of choice, human life, that's what you stand for. So that's why introductions are so useful, because they start telling your story. And that's the kind of thing that in BP debate, when you have 15 seconds, once the teams are out, to come to a decision is important. Because then, I immediately as a judge like, why did you vote for Open in government? I think that they talked about freedom of choice and they were very compelling, and they also explained to me how they save human lives. It's very easy to immediately tell what your story is, and you're therefore very easy to defend in adjudication. So that's the kind of thing that you want to do. So if you are on the other side on legalization of human organs, what arguments would you run? Just like, give me some ideas.
The way we exploit the poverty.
Yeah, poor people are exploited. What else?
Opposition.
On opposition. You're saying we should legalize and sale. Poor people are exploited, that's one argument. What else?
People won't donate as much, I guess.
People will donate less, yeah. There's no good feeling when you donate. So I think that those two are probably fine, right? Like, people will donate less, and also people in poverty are the ones who are going to be donating all their organs. And it's kind of terrible to donate your lung, right? You can't breathe well anymore. How do you summarize that into an introduction? What do you as a team stand for? The protection of disadvantaged people, yeah. I think also that that's probably like a very nice introduction to stand for, right? So, in a sentence, like if I was to do it, I'd probably be like, we don't think that something is a free choice when you're coerced by poverty and by your own circumstances. It's terrible when you are coerced into selling away a part of yourself in a way that will drastically reduce your quality of life. Most importantly, you don't save anyone, you reduce the number of donations. So then again, the judge immediately knows. They think that this is not a free choice, they think that this is coercive. And they think that it doesn't save anyone's life. So that's how you need to start utilizing introductions, to be like short, snappy, to the point, what do I stand for, but also in like a nice persuasive language. In terms of introductions, I do think that they're quite challenging to start to come up with. And they're the one thing in all of my speeches that I always write down word for word, very usually. I do recommend that. For most of my other speeches, for most of my arguments, I usually do them in bullet points. I never write down any like specific sentences. Introductions are the only bit that I write down in full, because I do think that it's quite important to deliberately force yourself to think, what do I stand for? How do I summarize it? How do I make it sound nice? So I think that that's quite useful because it does begin to tell your story. Conclusions are equally kind of important, but I do think that those are a bit more challenging to like plan, because you usually are like, oh my god, it's like 6:55 and I haven't finished my argument, I need to start concluding now, what do I do? So you can't spend as long in it. So I think that the most useful thing to have for conclusions is to have like a snappy sort of way that you always finish. So I am very boring to watching conclusions because I finish every single one of my speeches in the exact same way. At the end of the day, we value whatever it is we stand for over whatever it is the other team stand for. So it's just kind of like, in this debate, if I was on prop, I'd be like, at the end of the day, we think that people's abilities to know themselves and what choice is best for them is more important than the potential for misuse that we can regulate away anyway. We think that this matters more. Use it down. Or if you're on the other side, it's the same thing. At the end of the day, we think that people's choice people's choice only matters when that choice is free. We don't think that people in poverty have the capacity to make that free choice, and they are allowing for that exploitation to happen. Oppose. So it's again, at the end of the day, we value my thing over their thing. Quick reason why, sit down. I finish most of my speeches in that way. If you want to try other things, I also think that at the end of the day, I prefer to live in a world where we value choice over whatever it is that the other side is exploiting. At the end of the day, I prefer to live in a world where we respect donations and goodwill, and we respect the ability of individuals to keep themselves intact in spite of the circumstances they were born into. So just have a quick sort of like a, what you stand for, what the other side stands for, why do you win? And those again are important because both of those are like the sandwiches, like the bread to the filling of your arguments. And they tell the judge your story, they tell the judge your narrative. The judges know what you stand for. They feel like you stand for something, like your arguments matter, so they want to vote for you. In many cases, adjudications, and oftentimes you have very competent judges, but you oftentimes have judges that aren't so practiced. And in those situations, it's very important to make them feel your arguments. And I think that introductions and conclusions are really useful for that. Any questions on this so far? Okay, good. So next bit, I think that the second bit to start weaponizing rhetoric is to use persuasive language. By that, I don't mean like Brian uses very long words. I have a lot of difficulty sometimes speaking in a way that is equal to Brian, right? But it doesn't mean that. I think that there's a very big difference between saying that something is bad and saying that something is horrific. Saying that something is harmful to humans and saying that something is dehumanizing. Saying that torture is terrible and describing the act of torture in a way that makes people be like, that's horrifying. And those are the kinds of things that I think are really useful. Obviously it's kind of hard to sort of like try and describe, but when you're thinking about persuasive language, I think there's three things to think about. Firstly is using heavy-hitting words. Again, bad, horrific. Bad for people, dehumanizing. It's painful, it's torture. Words have very powerful meaning behind them, which is why the United States, when they conduct torture, they don't call it torture, they call it enhanced interrogation, because words sound bad. That's why in war, you call civilian deaths collateral damage rather than murder of innocents, because words have power. So you need to manipulate those words and make sure that you use heavy-hitting words. I think that particularly when you're describing impacts, it's really important. And these are again words that I actually do write in full. Impacts, I usually have like, I don't have a full sentence, but I have like horrible, terrible, torture. Because I know that those are words that I need to get out for the judge to understand what my impact is. Obviously don't go overboard, right? If it's like the debate about vaccinations, don't go like, you are torturing a child by like snapping things into their arm, it is dehumanizing and horrible, like that's going too far. But also when you're describing something horrible, use language that denotes that it's horrible. If you're describing torture, you can sort of like explain what it is, the way that humans suffer and why it's so painful. So I think that talking about those things is quite good and can be very powerful. The second thing that you can do, and I think that this is a very common mistake that people oftentimes make, is you need to talk about people's lives. Especially when talking about sort of like debates that have a principled component to them, people I think have a tendency to be very theory. Like, this is important because we believe that the importance of justice matters. This is important because it upholds the economy. I don't care about the economy, I don't know what it is, I can't touch an economy, I don't know what it looks like, I don't care about its feelings, it doesn't have any. I care, however, about the effect that the economy has on people's lives. So using words to describe your impact not in growing the economy, but rather in the way that it affects individuals on the ground is really important. So the economy matters because when people lose their jobs, it means that they're unable to do things like feed their families, like improve themselves, like get an education, like raise themselves out of the brutal poverty. That's why we care about it, because it affects people's lives. So always, when you're talking about sort of like vague things, don't be like, we care about this because we respect an individual's dignity and humanity. How does it affect humans? How does it affect people? So that's another way I think to try and like paint a picture, because then the judge cares, right? I don't care about the principle of responsibility unless I know how it deals with humans. The last thing that I also think that is quite useful is to play to people's moral intuitions. We have very strong moral intuitions for reasons that sometimes we can't quite explain. And I think that playing to that is quite useful. So for example, most people would say that you have the right to defend yourself, and that's important. Most people would say that you also have the right to have dignity. Most people would also say that humans should be equal. Those are kind of moral intuitions, and using those in debates is quite useful. Yeah.
Isn't this like debating not for the people but for the judges? I mean, by trying to understand their way of thinking, you're using the most like appealing ideas.
I think that it's very different to like targeting to the judge. You're targeting to a person, right? I don't know necessarily whether all of my judges think that equality matters, but overall, people seem to think about it. Like, if I asked all of you, like, do you think that equality is an important thing in society? Probably most of you would say yes. So don't try to be like, I think that this judge cares about like this more than other things, and then try to play to that. Just try to use language that you think most humans care about. And most humans do care about like these kinds of principles and do care about when other people are suffering. So try to use your language to play to that. I think that other useful thing in regards to talking about like moral intuitions is oftentimes to make analogies to things in society. Like, if you're talking about like theft, it's very useful to sometimes be like, if I went around and stole all of your phones, that would be unacceptable. In the same way, this is not an acceptable thing in society, or like whatever. So I think that drawing sometimes analogies to things that judges can relate to is very useful. So I think those are the three words in which using persuasive language can really change the debate for you. because it means that your impacts matter. Like I was judging a semi-final at the Vienna IV last weekend. We set a motion about setting like a unified history curriculum in the European Union. And it was, honest to God, the most painful thing to judge. It took us like 2 hours because everyone did like 5 layers of analysis. I don't know, but then no one had impacts. And I was like, but why do I care about this? I don't care. I don't know what this does. I have no idea what this like principle of justice means, what this vague idea about explaining atrocities. I don't know what any of this means. So the importance of impacts is very, very big. And it's something that persuasive language really allows you to do. The last thing, and this is sort of like the last thing that I want to sort of chat about in regards to this, and then, yeah, we can start heading over, is how I think that playing into the role that you have in debates is often quite useful. If I have a feminism debate, or if I have a debate about race or about Latin America, I always play that card. I'm always like, look, let me tell you what women are like, or look, coming from Latin America, I can tell you that we don't like the United States. Reasons for that. I am not using it as like, it's my experience and therefore you must believe me. I am using it as like an extra sentence that I throw in addition to all my analysis. So for example, like Miloš, in any debate that I've ever been against him on Yugoslavia or in anything that's remotely related to NATO, he will be like, look, I'm from Serbia, we know what NATO is like. And it doesn't matter, his analysis is very different. He can say that regardless of what side of the motion he's on, but it's a thing that you can't say, right? Equally, like, so it's like a thing that's useful to throw in, not as an, look, I am from Mexico, so I know about the war on drugs, therefore my argument is true. It's give a very well-analyzed argument, but be like, also, by the way, I understand this. Because that gives you like an addition of authority. And it means that if other teams try to respond to you, they kind of look like this, because they're just like, oh, look at them, like trying to educate the Mexican woman about what the war on drugs is like. So it does mean that you have some sort of like authority to your words, and it gives you more confidence. I also think that this is particularly valuable in regards to being an ESL speaker, especially when you're like, if you go to Euros or to more international competitions, you're likely to be in rooms that are going to be mixed, right? You're going to have like some teams from Europe, some teams from like Iona, some Irish teams, whatever. And I think that it's quite important to play into that role. So, for example, if you are extending on, I don't know, like some random British team, it's quite good to just be like, look, I know that they have fancier, like imagine you're extending on Brian, right? You can just be like, look, I know that Brian has longer words and fancier words than we do, but it's our analysis that is the most important thing. So using those words to immediately call attention to the judge, like, I know that they're EPL, but my analysis is really good. It means that the judge is more likely to double check themselves, to be like, ooh, like, are they actually like saying really good analysis? Am I actually just giving it to them because they have fancier language? So it means that they pay extra attention to those tiny things. I think that is also quite useful in PUIs. Like when you have like, this is really bad because you're gonna cause horrific war crimes. Extension. This is absolutely atrocious because the humongous harm that is going to occur to the causes of just war. I am saying the exact same thing, except one is like with fancier language that I have to come up with and it's very convoluted. So sometimes in POIs it's really useful to be like, closing has longer words and they're EPL, but at the end of the day they're saying the same thing that we're saying that you haven't responded to, that this causes more war. So pointing those out and playing into those roles does mean that then judges have to double check themselves. It's something that like Tim and Logro from Zagreb, who got to the World's Final this year, did a lot in the semi-final, or like did in the semi-final, which is like, they're using longer words, but we're saying the better analysis. It doesn't matter that they're trying to confuse you with language, they still haven't responded to our arguments. So playing into a role forces the judges to double check themselves and to be like, am I like doing it? Am I like accidentally just like not taking into attention into consideration what they're saying because they have like a fun accent or something like that. So I think that doing that is also quite a useful way to do it. And also I think it gives you more confidence and yeah. So overall, I think that those are the sort of three most useful ways. And at the end of the day, the third one is mostly just to sort of like give extra authority to yourself, but also to sort of make the judge check their own biases. Like another very common thing that like I do as well, like Tim and Robert do as well, most people do, is sort of like when you're in a debate about biases, you can just be like, yeah, like biases are oftentimes subconscious, you don't necessarily know that you're doing it. Like for example, how most judges would probably say that I sound less persuasive than someone who was born in Britain because they have a fancier accent than me. kinds of like self-relating examples is useful to get judges to double check themselves. But the first two, the sort of like using persuasive language for your impacts, and importantly, using a conclusion and an introduction that relate to your case and aren't just like a random quote from a poem or whatever, is useful in towards narrating a story and creating a narrative of what you are and what your team stands for. So that in the deliberation room, judges can immediately go like, because when you win, you're probably gonna get asked by chairs or like, oh yeah, like what did OO say? And you can immediately go, they said two things. This matters because there is no consent, and that means that there is no choice, and also because it doesn't really get the saving of lives. You immediately know what they are, what they stand for, you feel their story, and you want them to win. So using persuasive language and introductions and conclusions is quite useful for that, and in regards to weaponizing rhetoric. So that was a bit rushed, but I think that we managed to finish not mega late. So does anyone have any questions in regards to this or anything like that? Cool, fantastic. I look forward to hearing you use fancy interruptions next time I judge you.